So you've got to be asking the company or yourself, so what are your objectives? What are you hoping to achieve? It could be to increase brand awareness, to increase referrals back to your website, to increase downloads, just to increase engagement with your audience. So that's one area you really need to sort of carefully consider, because when you're starting out, you can't achieve all of these things at once, and you really have to sort of start with increasing your brand awareness.
My name's Peter Sumpton, and this is the Marketing Study Lab podcast. A podcast for those that are thinking, have thought and are doing, or already have a marketing qualification. Or even if you haven't, and you just want to know that a little bit more about what good, happy marketing is. As we cover a whole host of marketing topics, I chat to some amazing guests, each one a superstar in their own niche. And if you have a burning marketing question already, or after this episode, get in touch. We'll chat it through. peter@marketingstudylab.co.uk. Or find me on LinkedIn. The link is in the show notes. If you'd like to leave a review on iTunes, this will really help others find this podcast and spread the marketing word. Now let's get on with today's episode. So how do you cross-sell? How can it be a benefit to a business? And what options do we have when implementing this type of strategy? If you don't know, we'll be chatting about it later. But first, let's chat to Nicole Osborne, the founder of Lollipop Social, a company that provides social media management, consultancy, coaching, strategic development, and advertising strategies. Nicole is also a proud chartered marketer, studying and achieving this status via the CIM. Nicole describes her business ethos as fun and energetic, which certainly comes through on this little chat we're about to have, as well as being a big fan of lollipops, which doesn't really come through, but she is. So I could only really think of one question to start this little chat off with. And what I want to know is, Nicole, how many flumps do you think you could fit in your mouth?
10.
Cool. Have you tried?
No, and I wasn't going to. If you had asked for something edible, I might have tried it, like maybe chocolates, but no. So I'm just a guesstimate. I'm optimist. I'm saying 10.
Yeah, okay, fair enough, yeah. I don't blame you not trying it. It's just a bit weird. Anyway, moving on, tell us your story. What's been the formula that's brought you to this stage of your career as the founder of Lollipop Social?
Yeah, so I've always been really passionate about marketing. It started off with my parents running their own businesses in former Eastern Germany. And one of my first sort of jobs was to help them sell sunglasses on markets, on sort of weekly markets in Germany. And I always enjoyed it because selling sunglasses is all about figuring out someone's budget, making sure that you know what suits them, and then just introducing them to the right kind of pair of glasses. So I think marketing is actually quite similar, where you just figure out what are someone's problems and how can you position yourself or your company as the people or services who can solve those problems better. So I was inspired by my parents. And I came to England and I studied marketing. I was quite shocked, actually, once you study marketing, how hard it was, even at that time, to find a job. So I started off working in online advertising for a website, which was then purchased by the Financial Times, which was quite a good sort of way to start. And I've just been in marketing ever since. Why did I set up Lollipop Social? Well, about 4 years ago, I became a mum. And at that time, I was a marketing director, and I had been sort of a marketing director sort of for 5 years. But I found it was just really challenging to find a job at senior level who would offer just an ounce of flexibility. And I thought, you know what, I'm a chartered marketeer. I've invested years into my training. I don't understand why I should settle for a more junior job just because maybe I want to work maybe 4.5 days a week. So I thought, what I'll do, I will just go out and set up my own business. So I did. I set up Lollipop Social. I'm a social media and marketing consultant, and I'm now in my second year for Lollipop, third year as a freelancer. Yeah, and it's going really, really well. I help business owners get better results for their marketing and their social media. And the area I've really specialized in over the last sort of 6 months to a year is personal branding, really.
So was that transition quite difficult, or did you find it easy from going from working for somebody to working for yourself?
Do you know what, Peter? Really, really good question. One of the things which I really sort of noted was that obviously when you're part of a corporate brand, and I've always worked for really good brands. I worked for Financial Times, Institute of Directors, and my last role, the Association of Colleges. You are part of a corporate brand machine, and obviously being the marketing director means that you represent the brand, and you wave the flag to everyone and anyone, and that's part of your job. So all of a sudden, when you then set out by yourself in business, it is just you, and the focus is on you as a person. And you can't any longer just hide behind someone else's brand. You have to develop your own brand values. You need to figure out who you are, how do you want to come across to your clients. So that's quite a shock to the system. I mean, I always say it is exhausting and exciting in equal measures. But yeah, that's one of the things. I guess another thing is you have to be driven, because yes, I set out to gain greater flexibility, but reality is when you're building up a business, I sometimes work over the weekends. I sometimes work at night times just to sort of fit around my son's schedule. So it's kind of like, it's not an easy ride, but it's also really exciting. You work with a client, eventually you get to work with the kind of clients you want to work with more. So yeah, I mean, I would thoroughly recommend it, but it is tough. It can be tough, yes.
I love that, the fact that I think a lot of people think, I wish I worked for myself, because you get all this freedom and you sit back and relax because you work for yourself. And the reality is, oh, no. It's a lot more hours than probably working not a 9 to 5, because I don't think anyone works 9 to 5 now, but getting paid to do a job rather than somebody paying yourself directly. There's a lot of work that goes into that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't know, because probably we're recording this during the festive season. So I was having this chat with my mum, and so I remember days when maybe sometimes, I had maybe over festive season, I was working in the office, and maybe I was a little bit tipsy, and I was coming back to the office, and I still kind of just carried on. Therefore, now if I'm a bit tipsy and I can't do my work, usually, I'll get either paid by project or a day rate, very rarely an hourly rate, but it eats into my own time. So I still have to do it. So way less lunchtime drinking. And I'm saying lunchtime drinking because like one of the last jobs I had, sort of a whole entertaining international context was all part of it. But yes, it's certainly, but I think what's amazing when you work for a company, it's a really great training ground. Because if you work with a good line manager, you can develop your skills. You can get exposure to different departments. You can ask them for help in investing into your training. I was always lucky that I got the majority of my CM training all paid by my companies. So there's lots and lots of advantages, and I think it also depends on what stage you are in your life cycle. When I was much younger, I was able to work really, really long hours because marketing is quite competitive, isn't it? So sometimes it's seen that you have to work long hours to be really good. But actually, when you realize that it's not about the hours you put in, but actually working at the right things and working well. So
Absolutely.
yes, I can see the fun of working for a corporate company if it's a good company and you can develop, but I can also see the fun of working on your own. Definitely.
Moving on to your specialism then, when you're considering a social channel, how do you know which, if any, is going to be a good fit for an organisation or your target market, or you personally, if you are working for yourself?
Yeah. So with social, I mean, there's so many choices, and it constantly changes, right? I mean, and that's one of the exciting things about the social media industry, that it's constantly evolving. So for me, it starts really with two things, and regardless of whether you're looking at it on behalf of a company or for your own business, the same key principles really apply. So you've got to be asking the company or yourself, so what are your objectives? What are you hoping to achieve? It could be to increase brand awareness, to increase referrals back to your website, to increase downloads, just to increase engagement with your audience. So that's one area you really need to sort of carefully consider, because when you're starting out, you can't achieve all of these things at once, and you really have to sort of start with increasing your brand awareness to get a decent amount of following, whichever platform you choose. And then the second most important fact is actually, where does your audience hang out? So I always believe it's really important to take the time to come up with user personas, to get an idea of who is you really targeting, what social channels do they hang out on, what kind of content areas they're interested in. And then thirdly, I think particularly for smaller businesses, where you often find that actually the owner is either running the channels themselves, or they have one of the junior people helping them. It's really also what format you enjoy, because you are more likely to achieve consistency and an engaging presence if it's something you enjoy doing. So really, first of all, what are you hoping to achieve, and where's your audience? What do they like? But then also what suits your nature and your skill set.
Okay, so can you talk us through, you touched upon it a little bit there, creating a social media strategy then?
Mm-hmm. Great. So creating a social media strategy. Now, this is often like, how long is a piece of string? It's sometimes really is affected by the amount of budget you have available to do it and the amount of time to do it. But there's some sort of key steps. And if I may just briefly sort of talk you through a few of them.
Absolutely.
So first of all, the first step, and I touched on this earlier, is really about understanding the needs of your business. What do you want to achieve on social? Who do you want to reach? And also, how does your sort of current social media marketing fit into your overall marketing strategy? So first of all, you understand the needs of your business. Then I would strongly recommend you create user personas to really decide which of the platforms available are the best ones for you to reach your target audience and to help you meet your objectives. Then you would develop a bespoke strategy for each of those platforms, because each of them will be a little bit different. A strategy really that delivers results and can sort of become a key pillar of your overall marketing strategy, because I think the most important thing with social, in my mind, is that it has to be integrated across the different marketing strategies you use. So we've developed a bespoke strategy. Part of this, we'll have to have really clear and measurable metrics, because we want to know, is our strategy working? And that's the beauty with social. You find out so quickly whether something is working or not. Then I would say, you really have to set up your platforms to really optimize the existing ones, whether that's really having an on-brand winning profile description, using really good on-brand pictures, having the right links to your website, having a branded hashtags, and really optimizing the call to action. So then for me, the sixth step, and everyone will do this in slightly different order, but for a small business, I would say then the sixth step is really about finding the key influencers in your sector that complement your brand, that complement your message, and that will really help you to broaden your message when you start engaging with them and nurturing relationships with them. And then the whole process of optimizing your platforms continues. And then I would say, so once you know exactly which platform you're on, who the influencers, what is your audience like, that's when I would really sit back and develop a content strategy that really speaks to your audience and is totally on brand for you. And I would do this quite late in the process, because I believe it's not right to jump into that right away. You need to sort of know from a strategic level which channels are right and what does my audience want. So you create a content strategy, because what we don't want is that you just set out and deliver your strategy and then you have no content to deliver. And here it's really important to note that the word social and social media strategy is so important. So it's a bit like going to a party. You can't just be the most boring guest where you just talk about yourself all the time. You have to share content from other respectable sources which will complement you, and you really have to also engage with your audience, and your content strategy that should come out. I like cake, so I always like to think of it as a sort of piece of cake. So let's say if it's chocolate cake, I have like 10 different slices. What content areas are each of those? And then for each of them you would find some influencers and also your own content you can bring in. And then for me it's all really about testing, measuring, reflecting, refining. Because that's the beauty of social media, is that actually you don't have to invest all that much up front, and you can learn rather quickly what's working and what's not working so well. So in essence, I think I've taken you through about 9 sort of steps. Mm-hmm. I think people will sometimes do them in different ways and invest different levels of time at different stages. But I would say following those steps will work.
That's cool. I like the fact that just at the end there you mentioned test, measure, reflect, refine. I think that's massively important in social.
Yeah,
A lot of
I agree.
people don't do that, and they just continue with content that might not make much sense to anyone.
Right, and that's really wasting your time, because you want to know if there's been a spike, let's say a spike in followers, or what have you been doing leading up to it? Was that maybe part of an email campaign? Did one of your influencers do something on that day? Did something topical come up? Because if you don't refine it, your results are not really going to improve. And the whole idea with social is that you know exactly what time your audience is going to be on a platform, so you optimize your posting in line with that. You learn over time what kind of content they like. Is it a poll, or is it a video, or whatever it might be? So yes, I think testing, measuring, reflecting, refining is so important. And I think that's music to someone who's being trained for the Chartered Institute of Marketing qualifications, because that's what we really learn, isn't it? To have a strategy in place and then to refine it over time and have metrics so that you can report back on what you're delivering.
Just sticking with the CIM, they recently based an assignment around algorithms, which threw a lot of students and me as well as a tutor and as an examiner. It was, and I think it scared a lot of people, just that word. If they'd used a different word, it would have been a lot easier. But with this in mind, what makes an interesting social media feed that can really engage with an audience?
Yeah. So just very briefly touching on algorithms. I think algorithms make social media quite scientific, because each of the platforms will have a different algorithm. And what an algorithm is really just means is how they're favoring certain types of content, what they're pushing forward. And each of the platforms will have a different thing. For example, LinkedIn doesn't want you to send anyone off the platform. So if you post something from a company page on LinkedIn, you're much better off having a link to a blog back to your website as part of a first comment. And that's determined by the algorithm. Facebook, it's all been about engagement, so it's got to spark a conversation. So anything you post which sparked a conversation is still really being favored by Facebook. So yes, I would say to people, don't be scared of the algorithm, because I think in social media, as soon as you've learned something, it's out of date. I think that's just the reality of it. And the algorithm changes daily. The important thing to do is to know which websites to check, just to stay on top of it. And so, Peter, what was the second bit of the question?
The second part was what makes an interesting social media feed. So you're actually engaging with your audience, because like you were saying, you can create any content, but what makes it interesting for an audience?
Yeah, so let's just say, for example, on Facebook. So algorithm tells us we have to spark a conversation. So let's pose questions to our audience. Let's make it really easy for them to interact with us. That's when they do interact with us, let's reply to them. So one example could be, you could be a local bakery, and you could say, post a GIF of like your favorite cake. Or how does your favorite cake make you feel? So posting a GIF is relatively easy for someone to do. And then as soon as you get a post, then as the bakery, it's really important for you to acknowledge that. So asking questions of your audience, you could even ask a poll. We are thinking of sharing a recipe. Are you more interested in rye bread versus donuts? What's most urgent? So just bringing in your audience. And it's a point I touched on earlier, and I have this conversation really often with clients, is that if you just talk about yourself, no one has any reason to visit your platform on a regular basis. You have to generally share some content which is generally helpful and of value to your audience. And that's why when you know your audience, what are their questions, what are their dreams, what are their hopes, what are their challenges, you can build on that. And often, one really good source for asking is actually talking to your customer service team. If it's a bigger company, because they have their customers on the line all the time, and they will know what questions they come up with. So if then your content offers answers to that in an easily digestible way, entertaining way as well, you will have an interesting platform. So big learning really is to not just talk about yourself, to limit that, but then also, and that's the sort of step most companies luckily are making, is to share something which is called behind the scenes content. So nowadays, we all love a great logo and a logo strap line, but actually people buy from people. So the more you show what your teams are about, or if you're a solopreneur, the more you show yourself. That is really good because it gives people an insight and you allow your audience to get to know you, to trust you, and to hopefully one day when they have a buying need for your services to think of you. So I would say behind the scenes content works really well. And, anyone with a bit of marketing training, such as the CM one, should be able to take charge of that. Let's say if there's a team meeting, let's take a picture, let's say something we've discussed, or if you had like a team outing, or sometimes just a Friday picture of the office. This is the sort of real content people expect to see on social. It's a very sort of conversational platform. And even platforms like LinkedIn, where, traditionally we've all seen it just as a recruitment platform, it's moved on so much. It's okay to post a picture of like a Christmas do on there. Maybe not when anyone is drunk, but just, sort of like when you have your team get together. So use it to really show off who you are as a company in terms of the people who are delivering the service.
It's an interesting point, that. So do you think it's more important to push the organization's brand or your own personal brand, which can be difficult if you're working for a large organization, like you say, and what's the difference? Why does it matter?
Well, I guess if I'm a young aspiring marketeer and I'm ambitious, I would thoroughly recommend, of course, promote posts from your company. I consider that's your job as a marketeer, but start thinking about what other things I like to be known for. So let's say if I'm part of the customer acquisition form and I really have a skill for data, maybe I can write a article on LinkedIn to say, what is this latest data telling you about your customers? How can you action that? Or, how can you really use Google Analytics to better understand how your website works? So I think it depends on your objective. I think absolutely, as corporate marketeers, we are our corporate brand. But if then I think of my own career, I think it's really important to sort of start commenting on certain posts to show what your opinion is. Because I think, what, we have to be selfish. We have to develop our careers. And nowadays, it's not just good enough to do a great job and to have the right qualifications, but you also have to let other people know about it. And social media, such as LinkedIn, is just the best sort of online platform tool you can find. Now, second part of this question. So you said, so if there's a bigger company, should they promote just a bigger company, but also the people inside it? I think it's really important for bigger companies to have a social media policy which empowers their staff to know what they're meant to be doing on social and to give them some freedom, but also to make sure that it then fits the corporate objectives. For example, often companies will say you can't mention any client names in your posts. And I think that's really important. So there's got to be a strategy in place for how to encourage team members to share about the organization, but to get it right and to be on brand.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the on brand thing is massively important, and if you've got a lot of people in the same organization, let alone the same department, saying completely different things, even if you're going to create a strategy down to the tone of voice potentially that you're using or certain keywords, that it can sort of throw people and what is this brand? Have I got an affinity to it? Is it for me? It's.
Peter, I totally agree. And I think often what I find when organizations sort of start bringing social media in-house, the thing they really struggle with is the tone of voice. And that's literally just it's just like your personality on paper or on the screen. So you've got to have some training for your teams about how to be approachable, but not too approachable, if that makes sense. So I think you need to go through it. So how authoritative do you want to be? How funny do you want to be? How serious do you want to be? And just define it and then let people write some examples so that everyone is in their comfort zone. I think that's really, really important because it's not like writing a letter like "Dear Sir, yours sincerely." It just doesn't work like this.
Yeah, sure.
And that's a challenge us young marketeers have. Often, we might have bosses who are classically trained, who only know how to do social media, for example, through agencies. So, yeah, I mean, it's your job to also then help your boss to help you in a way.
Yeah, that can be massively frustrating when people just don't understand it or.
Yeah.
It's just a different channel, and it's like if you were writing for an advert, writing for PR, writing for a letter, like you said.
Yeah.
They're all completely different, and this is no exception.
Yeah, I agree.
You mentioned the CIM once or twice during this conversation. I'm just wondering how you'd suggest students can keep motivated throughout the studies, especially when they've got major commitments, like
Yeah.
you've said like work and family, just to name two of them. How can they keep focused and motivated?
Yeah, I mean, it's it's a challenging question, right? Because it's really hard fitting in your studies. So I think one thing is always to keep the end goal in mind. Know why are you studying for VCM? You're not probably not doing it because your company sent you on a training course, but you're doing it to grow your own knowledge so that you can demonstrate to the world that you not only passionate about marketing, but you also really know it well. So always bear that in mind. Why are you doing it? And then, so for myself, I always look back. When I have a big challenging project, I always look back and think, okay, so what normally works for me? How do I motivate myself? And for me, one of the things which I always like doing, and it might sound silly to many people, but I like to set myself as incentives. So I did a training program, digital mums course, where for 6 months it's like an apprenticeship. You really learn about social media, and you work for a company immediately. And when I was doing it, I also had my first client. So I had lots of commitments to deal with, but I knew the end game. I wanted to be able to say after 6 months that I really knew my stuff about social media. And I just kept that in mind. And yes, I made some sacrifices, throughout those 6 months. I hardly had a social life. And I think that sometimes you just have to, it's just the way it is. The other thing which I would always recommend is find a study buddy. And I think that's so great when you do courses with the CM, with the different providers. There's going to be people who are exactly in your situation. So why not use each other for accountability? Why not say, oh God, we have this assignment. I'm not going to leave it to the last minute. And then it's going to be really panicky. But actually, let's check on each other on progress. Let's say, we're doing the first outline by this date, and then check with each other. So yeah, use those people you're studying with actually as accountability partners. So first, remember why you're doing it. Think of what worked for you in the past to motivate yourself. Use the same strategies, but then also have a study buddy from your groups.
I think that's a really good point, because it's almost like having a mentor, and not just for accountability, but the reason that I started Marketing Study Lab and doing what I'm doing is because I know you can, particularly if you're doing distance learning where you're not going to any workshops, you can feel very isolated.
Yeah.
And then if you've got questions and everything, you think, well, who can I turn to? It's okay sending an email, but if you know there's somebody you can actually contact and is going to be there constantly, it really does help.
Yeah, so figure out what sort of communities work for you. And as you said, Peter, nowadays with distance learnings, you probably have like a Facebook group, and you can ask questions and really use those tools. And then I think then also be realistic and know, okay, this is going to be a tough period. Let's say if you're doing it over a year, but it's only going to be for that year. Mm-hmm. It's not going to go on like this forever. Yeah. And I think that's the other thing to realize. Yes, it's going to be tough, but I think there's still rewards out there to be able to say, look, marketing industry is very, very competitive. How do I set myself apart from other people out there in the marketplace? And the one way to set yourself apart is to be able to say, look, I'm studying for a CM qualification because I take my job and being professional and knowing all the latest theories really seriously. Mm-hmm. So it's a really good branding tool.
Are you ready for some quickfire questions, Nicole?
Of course I am.
Cool. Let's do it. Name one must-read business book.
Right, something I've read this year, which I absolutely loved, is called Steal the Show for speeches, job interviews, and to deal with closing pitches. And it's by Michael Port. And I think it's great for British people because I think we sometimes struggle a bit sort of coming across as really confident when we have to deliver a talk or we go into an interview. And it's just called Steal the Show by Michael Port, and I would really recommend it.
Cool. What was the last thing you Googled?
Whether my local library is open.
Oh.
Nothing very exciting, but I'm constantly on Google, so.
Brilliant. What is your most used app at the moment?
Oh, okay. Apart from social apps, because obviously that's what I do for a living, Trello. I absolutely love Trello. It's like an organizational app, and I have it on my desktop and I have it on my phone. I know my clients' projects are on there, when I have to invoice people, when I have to book a holiday. So I love Trello.
Organization, that's what it's all about.
That's it.
What is your favorite theory, concept, or methodology?
Yes, I really like the Pomodoro technique. I really believe a task is going to take you as long as you give it to or allocate to, and that if I sort of set myself sort of 25 minutes bursts of activity, and then maybe I have a coffee, or I'll go for a little walk. So I really love that sort of chunking down your tasks and then sticking to it for 25 minutes, really focusing, because I believe the whole multitasking doesn't really work.
Yeah.
So I think Pomodoro technique is great for getting things done and focusing.
Yeah, for sure. Final question then, most important one. English Sunday roast or German Braten, if I said that correctly?
Such a challenging question. Yeah, you pronounced it beautifully.
Excellent.
Right. I think after 20 years of living in Britain, it's got to be English Sunday roast.
Yes,
I mean, it's just so delicious. Like when you get like all the trimmings as well, the Yorkshire pudding, and I think the most amusing thing, like pigs and blankets and roasties. So yeah, it's got to be English Sunday roast. I mean, it's just so delicious. So.
Yeah. Pigs in blankets, when you think about it, it sounds all warm and comforting, but it's quite evil, really.
Absolutely. Do you know the funny thing? So when you're bilingual, you still take things quite literal in your head when you translate things. You think, what's all that about pigs and blankets? So no, it's delicious. I'd say, I really like the English cuisine, and I've really come to appreciate it. The only thing I sometimes miss is really the continental kind of bread. But we've got lots of European bakeries now out here, so I think the Brits can still step up their efforts when it comes to bread.
Nicole, if people want to find more out about Lollipop marketing or get in touch with you, what's the best way to do it?
Yeah, so come and visit my website, www.lollipopsocial.co.uk. You will find lots of blogs on there on how to build up a personal brand, how to come across and have some more fun and better results with your social media. I'd also encourage any of your students, if they'd like to touch base with me on LinkedIn. I'm on that platform all the time, always happy to help, because I appreciate, when you're studying, it's sometimes nice to be able to talk to someone who is already working in marketing. So I'm very happy for people to get in touch. And Twitter is my first love. So if anyone is on Twitter, a great platform is at lollipop_social.
Nicole, it's been fantastic speaking to you today. So much content there. It's been brilliant. Thank you.
Oh, Peter, thank you so much for having me. Really appreciate it. Thank you.
Other than a lot of value, what else can we take away from that amazing chat with Nicole Osborne? Well, first of all, what do you want to be known for? And this is where your social content should be focused. Yes, from a holistic point of view, your content needs to be varied. But the overall objective and underlying themes should always be consistent. Be it looking to sell cars or cans of soup, it doesn't matter. Consistency is key. Nicole's formula for creating an excellent social strategy follows 9 key steps, but I've narrowed these down to 7, which are, first and foremost, understand the needs of the business you're working with. Use customer personas to define the market and the platforms that should be used. Each platform will require a bespoke strategy that also fits in with the entire marketing strategy of the business. Step number 4 is to optimize each platform to maximize exposure. Then you can look to the key influencers within the same marketplaces as you or your organization. Number 6 is to create a content strategy that is consistent, on message, and on brand, which seems quite far down the list. But as Nicole pointed out, it's important to get grounded and understand the basics of what you're trying to do in social before you go ahead and create your content. And finally, number 7, one of the most important points that's often forgotten. You've got to remember you must measure and monitor via each platform's metrics to make sure you're hitting your target market and achieving what you set out to do. Nicole refers to this as the test, measure, reflect, and refine model, and it works for me. And finally, let's bring it back to your studies with a study buddy, which we've spoken about in the past on episode 28. But what Nicole highlighted was the fact that a study buddy provides accountability, giving you motivation and encouragement with your CIM qualifications. So go get one. That is a study buddy and a qualification, but a study buddy first. The qualification follows through accountability and encouragement. I'll be quiet now. And finally, on to cross-selling. There are many different ways we can cross-sell before, during, and after a purchase or a decision that's been made by a customer. But what is it? Well, cross-selling is the action of selling more than was originally anticipated to an existing customer. It's as succinct as that. There are loads of great examples, but I like to think that Amazon do this best because they attribute about 35% of all sales to the customers who bought this item, also bought, and frequently bought together options within their site practically on every single product you see. Other examples range from car sales, including additional features, to a fast food outlet asking if you want extra fries with your meal. But what are the benefits of this? Well, there is the obvious, the increased revenue from a customer who's already buying from you. But other benefits, such as the introduction of a new or unknown product or service to a customer, could extend the customer life cycle, or selling existing stock so you can replace it with newer items. That could be a potential benefit. Now, these items that you're cross-selling should always be linked in some way and offer a benefit to the customer, unless there is a danger of isolating the customer and potentially losing their custom altogether. Food for thought, I know. French fries. Thank you so much for joining us today on Marketing Study Lab. It really means the world that you're listening to this out there. And hopefully I've provided you some value. If you're looking to know more about what Marketing Study Lab does and is about, go to marketingstudylab.co.uk or get in touch with me personally, LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, or feel free to email me at peter@marketingstudylab.co.uk. Happy marketing.